The forest was dark and cold. Thick trees stood like tall giants, and strange shadows moved between them. A thin mist covered the ground, and the air smelled of wet leaves and danger. No birds sang here. No light entered this place. It was a forest forgotten by time. In the center of that forest, hidden under a large fallen tree, there was a cage. Inside that cage sat a little alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes big and glowing in the dark. She wore nothing but torn cloth around her thin body. Her knees were pulled to her chest, and she hugged herself tightly. She didn't cry anymore. She had cried for hours, maybe days. Her voice was gone. The girl didn't know how long she had been there. She only remembered being grabbed. Cold claws, screams, a blindfold, then the cage and silence. The monsters came and went. They fed her old scraps. Sometimes they didn't feed her at all. They laughed in a language she didn't understand. Their eyes were red and sharp. Their skin was black and rough like stone. When they left, she would listen, hoping to hear a voice. Her mother's voice. But it never came. Far away in another part of the forest, her mother searched. The alien woman limped forward, her arms scratched by branches, her feet muddy and bruised. She whispered the girl's name again and again. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Every bush, every sound. She looked, but the forest gave no answer. Then someone else entered the forest, a human scout, a man named Eric. He had been sent to scan old ruins nearby. His ship had landed outside the forest, and his scanner picked up strange energy deep inside the trees. Against orders, he went alone. He wore a dark green jacket, carried a small bag, and had a light weapon on his hip. As he walked, he felt something was wrong. The trees seemed to watch him. He moved slowly, carefully, brushing away webs and thorns. His boots made soft crunching sounds on the damp ground. Then, he stopped. A sound. Very soft. Not an animal. Not wind. It was like a whisper. A breath. A weak voice. He followed it. Closer and closer. Then he saw it. A cage. Half covered in moss and broken wood. And inside, a child. Eric crouched down. His eyes widened. What the hell? The girl looked up. Her body tensed. She pulled away, shaking. Her head. She had seen humans before, but she didn't trust anyone now. Everyone hurt her. Eric raised his hand slowly. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. She didn't answer. He stepped closer, crouched low. He looked at the cage. It was old, metal, locked with a strange alien device. The girl's wrists had marks from the chains. Her eyes looked empty. Eric's heart sank. Who did this to you? She tried to speak, but no words came out. Her throat was too dry. Eric opened his bag, took out a small water pack, and carefully slid it between the cage bars. The girl stared at it, then slowly, very slowly, she took it. She drank one drop, then two. Then she coughed. Eric smiled softly. That's better. Suddenly, a loud noise. He turned fast. Footsteps, heavy ones. Not human. The girl's eyes widened in fear. She mouthed something. They're coming. Eric's hand moved to his weapon. He looked back at the lock. No time to figure it out. So he did the only thing he could. He shot it. The lock sparked, then broke apart. He pulled the door open and reached for the girl. Come on. She didn't move at first. He grabbed her, gently but quickly pulling her into his arms. She was light, too light. The ground shook. Growls echoed through the trees. Eric ran. Branches hit his face. Thorns cut his arms, but he didn't stop. The girl clung to him. Behind them, the monsters. Howled, real monsters. Tall, red-eyed creatures with long claws and bones showing through their skin. They were angry. They had lost their prize. Eric ran faster. The girl closed her eyes. She had been left to die among monsters. But now, Someone had found her, and her mother was still searching. Eric held the little alien girl tightly in his arms as he ran through the dark forest. Her tiny body was trembling. Her eyes were half shut, and she was too weak to speak. But she was still alive. Behind them, the monsters roared with rage. Their footsteps were heavy, shaking the ground. Trees shook as they passed. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness like fire. Eric's breath was short, but he didn't stop. He knew the girl wouldn't survive if they got caught again. He saw a rocky slope ahead. Just past it, there was a thick patch of bushes and a fallen tree, good for hiding. He jumped over roots, climbed the slope, and slid down the other side. Then he crawled under the tree and gently placed the girl down. She looked up at him with frightened eyes. "Shh," Eric whispered. "We're safe. For now." He peeked through the leaves. The monsters were close. 3 of them. One sniffed the air, growling deep. Another slammed its claws into a tree, breaking it in half. But they didn't see him. Not yet. Eric didn't move. He waited. Minutes passed. Finally, the monsters growled in frustration and walked away, their footsteps fading. Eric let out a deep breath. He turned to the girl. "You okay?" She blinked slowly. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Thirsty?" He handed her another water pouch. This time she drank a little more. Her hands were shaking. He could see the marks on her arms and neck, scars from chains and rough treatment. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She looked down. Mira. That's a pretty name," he said with a warm smile. "I'm Eric." Her lips moved slightly, like she was trying to smile too. Eric checked his wrist device. No signal. The forest was too deep, too wild. He needed to get her somewhere safe, somewhere she could rest. "Can you walk?" Mira tried. Her legs wobbled and she fell back down. Eric picked her up again. "It's okay. I've got you." He moved through the forest more carefully this time, always listening. The monsters could return, and he didn't know how far Mira's captors had spread. As he walked, Mira spoke again. "My mom is looking for me." Eric looked down at her. "You're sure?" She nodded slowly. "I heard her. Calling, I think. A few days ago." Eric felt a lump in his throat. "Then we'll find her, I promise." They walked for a long time. The forest seemed endless. But then, he found something. An old camp, broken crates, rusted tools, a burned-out fire pit. No, one had been here in years. Still, it was better than nothing. He cleared a small space under a rock ledge and laid Mira down on a soft patch of moss. Then he took out a small heater from his bag and turned it on. Warm air filled the space. Mira sighed. Eric sat next to her and pulled out a snack bar. He broke off a small piece and handed it to her. "Here." She sniffed it, then took a bite. Her face changed. It was the first time she had tasted something good in days. Tears formed in her eyes. Eric looked away, giving her privacy. He knew what that moment meant. She felt safe. For now. Then he remembered the translator band on her wrist. It was broken, wires hanging out. He took out his toolkit and carefully began to fix it. As he worked, he asked, "Do you remember where you were taken from?" Mira nodded slowly. "From a ship. We crashed. My mom pulled me out. Then they took me. I screamed, but no one came." Eric paused. "I came," he said softly. She looked at him. "Yes," she whispered. "You did?" He smiled. "And I'm not leaving until you're safe." The translator sparked. It buzzed for a moment, then glowed green. Mira touched it. "I can hear better now." Eric nodded. "Good. Now you can tell me everything." She told him what she remembered, how the ship crashed on this wild planet, how she and her mother were separated, and how the monsters found her first. Eric listened carefully. "We'll find her," he said again. "I promise." Outside, The wind howled through the trees, but inside that small rocky shelter for the first time in days, Mira slept peacefully. Mira woke up slowly. She blinked at the soft light coming from the little heater. Her thin arms were wrapped in a blanket Eric had given her. It smelled like oil and metal, but it was warm. For the first time in many days, she had slept without fear. Eric sat nearby watching a small map on his wrist device. His eyes looked tired but focused. He looked up and smiled when he saw her awake. "Morning," he whispered. "You slept almost 6 hours." She sat up. "Are they still hunting us?" Eric nodded. "Probably, but I checked the area. We're still hidden." He handed her a protein bar. She took it carefully. "Where are we going now?" He pointed to a blinking red dot on his screen. "This forest ends in 4 kilometers. Past that, there's a ridge. I saw an old signal tower there. When I first landed, if I can power it up, maybe we can send a message to your mother." Mira's eyes lit up. "You can find her? If she's alive and searching," Eric said, "she'll hear us." Mira stood, but her legs were still weak. Eric held her arm. "Gently. We'll go slow," he said. "But we need to leave now." He packed quickly, keeping the heater's small battery, a flare, and a small blaster at his side. Mira carried a tiny emergency lamp and clung to his sleeve as they slipped out of the camp. The forest was darker than before. Fog covered the ground like a blanket. Trees loomed like statues, their twisted shapes looking like sleeping giants. No birds, no bugs, just silence. Until a snap. Eric stopped. He raised a hand, listening. Mira didn't move. Then, another sound. Breathing. Not his, not hers. Something was near. He pulled Mira behind a tree and crouched. From between the shadows, 2 red eyes appeared. The monster was here. It sniffed the air, growling low. Its body was huge, hunched like a gorilla, but its head was wrong. Long. Mouth, sharp fangs, black skin with glowing red veins. Eric aimed his small blaster, too far for a clean shot. The monster stepped closer. It sniffed again, now only 10 feet away. Eric held his breath. Then, another sound. Behind the monster, a branch broke. Another creature had arrived. The first one turned fast, growling at the second. They hissed at each other. Eric didn't waste the moment. He grabbed Mira's hand and ran. They darted between trees, jumped over roots, ducked under branches. Mira followed without slowing. Fear gave her strength. Behind them, loud roars echoed. The monsters had noticed. Eric looked back. 2 beasts were charging after them. "Keep going," he shouted. He led her toward a dry riverbed filled with sharp rocks and dead trees. It was dangerous, but it would slow the monsters down. Eric slid down the slope, holding Mira close as they landed. Rocks scratched their arms and legs, but they kept moving. One monster leapt from above, but it misjudged the distance and slammed into the rocks. The other followed from the side. Eric turned and fired his blaster. 1, 2, 3 shots. The bolts hit the monster in the chest, burning its flesh. It screamed and staggered, but didn't fall. Eric pulled Mira and ran again. The riverbed led to a small tunnel in the rock, a natural cave, tight and dark. They crawled inside. The monster didn't follow right away. It sniffed outside, confused. Inside the tunnel, Mira whispered, "It's too dark." Eric handed her the emergency lamp. A soft blue light filled the narrow space. The monster roared again, but didn't come in. "Too big," Eric said. "It can't crawl in here." Mira trembled. "What if it waits outside?" Eric took a deep breath. "Then we wait too." Minutes passed, then more. Finally, the sounds faded. Eric peeked out. The monster had moved on, probably hunting another path around the rocks. He and Mira came out slowly. The sky above was turning gray. Dawn was close. "There," Eric said, pointing to a hill. The ridge. They climbed carefully. Step by step. Mira was breathing hard but didn't stop. At the top, they saw it. The signal tower. It was broken but still standing. A metal arm reached toward the sky. Old, silent, but maybe still useful. Eric smiled. We made it. Mira looked up, eyes wide. Can we call her now? Eric placed her gently on the ground and pulled out his toolkit. Give me time. I'll try to make it speak again. And below the hill, in the shadows, a third monster had seen them. Eric worked fast. Wires, dust, broken panels. The old signal tower creaked in the cold wind. It hadn't been used in years, maybe longer. Vines had grown across its base and rust covered most of the outside. But the frame was strong, and deep inside, some systems still blinked. Mira sat on a stone, hugging her knees. Her face was pale, her lips dry. She stared at the forest below. It was quiet now, but she didn't trust that silence. Are they still following? She asked softly. Eric didn't look up. Maybe. But if I get this tower working, we won't need to run anymore. She nodded, but didn't smile. He glanced at her. You okay? She hesitated. I'm tired. Eric paused. I know. Just hold on a little longer. Suddenly, the tower's main light flickered. He smiled. Yes, we've got power. He connected his wrist device to the panel. A soft beep echoed. Come on. Just one signal burst. A green light blinked. Then, beep, message. Sent, Eric exhaled. It's out. Mira stood slowly. To my mother? If she's alive, she'll hear it. Mira's eyes glistened. She is alive. Eric didn't doubt it, but they couldn't stay here. The wind was picking up. Rain clouds formed above. A storm was coming fast. And below them, hidden in the thick trees, something watched. The third monster, larger, smarter than the others, followed their scent. It had seen them at the tower and now moved silently, crawling on all fours like a beast. Eric saw the storm clouds. We need shelter, he said. He picked Mira up again. She didn't protest. Her body was too tired. They climbed down the ridge, carefully, following an old hunter's trail until they found what they needed, a cave. It was narrow at first, but deeper inside, the space opened into a wide, rocky room. Dry, safe, dark. Eric set Mira down and took out his small heater again. He placed it in the center and turned it on. Warmth slowly filled the cave. Then he opened a box from his bag. Inside, emergency fire gel. He made a small circle of stones, lit the gel, and a soft orange flame came to life. Mira sat close to it, holding out her thin fingers. Her skin glowed in the firelight. She looked fragile, too small for all the pain she had seen. Eric took out water and food. He handed her a ration bar. Eat slowly, this one's better. She took a bite. Her eyes widened. It's sweet. He chuckled. Yeah, it's real food. She smiled, a small, broken smile. But it was the first real one he'd seen from her. He sat beside her. You've been brave, he said. Mira looked down. I was scared. He nodded. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about protecting your heart even when everything is scary. She stared at the fire. I miss her. Eric nodded again. I know. Outside, lightning flashed, thunder rolled over the hills. Then, something scraped the rocks near the cave entrance. Eric's hand moved to his blaster. He stood, moving quietly toward the sound. He peeked out. Nothing, just wind and rain. But he knew what he felt. They weren't alone. He returned to Mira. We may have company. She stood, frightened. The monsters? Maybe, I'll stay awake. He pulled out a motion sensor and placed it near the cave mouth. Then he built a small shield wall using rocks and his gear. Anything to slow down anything that might come in. Mira helped, even though her hands shook. When they finished, they sat by the fire again. I'm scared, she whispered. Eric looked at her and said, Then I'll be scared with you, but I'll protect you. Mira looked at the flame. Do you have a family? Eric hesitated. I did. Lost them in a raid, years ago. She didn't ask more. She just whispered, "Now you have me." Eric blinked slowly. He didn't speak. She leaned against him, her small head resting on his arm. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the monster circled the cave. It didn't charge yet. It watched. It waited. It wanted them weak, tired. But Eric wasn't tired. Not anymore. He watched the fire and waited. Rain poured from the sky like a waterfall. The alien mother stumbled through the forest, her body soaked, her eyes red from crying. Her name was Sci, and she had not slept in days. Her feet bled with every step, but she didn't stop. The storm roared above her, but she didn't care. She clutched a broken locator in one hand and a small glowing pendant in the other. The same kind her daughter wore around her neck, a mother-daughter pair. If her daughter was alive, this pendant would glow brighter. It flickered now, just faintly, but it was enough. "Mira," Sci whispered through trembling lips. "I'm coming." She pressed forward through vines and mud. Thunder cracked, shaking the trees. But she didn't stop. Meanwhile, deep inside the cave, Mira stirred from her sleep. She opened her eyes slowly. The fire had burned down to embers. She was warm, but a strange feeling pulled at her chest. Something inside her whispered, "Mama is near." Eric sat at the cave entrance, his blaster ready. He hadn't slept. His eyes scanned the rain. Suddenly, the motion sensor blinked. Eric stood up fast, weapon raised. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Mira crawled closer to the wall, her heart pounding. Footsteps, slow, soft, but steady. Then, silence. Eric stepped out into the rain. His boots sank into the mud. He aimed and saw her, a woman, blue-skinned, wet and exhausted, her arms shaking, her eyes wide. "Mira?" The woman gasped. Eric's eyes widened. "Sci?" The pendant around her neck glowed brighter. Eric lowered his weapon instantly. "It's her," he whispered. Mira ran outside, barefoot on the wet stones. "Mama!" Sci dropped to her knees as Mira flew into her arms. Tears poured from both, their eyes, but neither felt the rain anymore. Eric watched, his chest tight with emotion. Sci held Mira close, crying hard. I thought you were gone. I waited for you," Mira sobbed. "I kept hearing you in my dreams." Eric looked away, giving them space. The rain hit his face, but he didn't care. This moment wasn't his. It belonged to them, but something was wrong. He felt it. A chill. He turned and saw it. The monster. It stood just beyond the tree line, watching, waiting. Sci felt it too. Her arms tightened around Mira. "We're not safe, are we?" Eric nodded. "No. One of them followed us." Sci stood, still holding her daughter. "We have to run." Eric checked his map. "There's a beacon station 2 kilometers east. If we reach it, we can call for rescue." "But in this storm?" Sci asked. Eric looked at the glowing pendant on her neck. "You came through worse just to find her." Sci gave a small, tired smile. "Then let's finish it together." Eric took Mira from her arms. "I'll carry her. You stay close." They ran through mud and thorns, rain in their eyes, thunder all around. And behind them, the monster came. It moved faster now. It had waited long enough. Eric pushed through fallen trees, slipping, sliding, his grip tight around Mira. Sci stumbled, but didn't stop. Her legs screamed in pain, but she followed the sound of her daughter's breathing. The beacon station appeared through the mist. A tall tower with flickering lights. One last climb. They reached the door, but it was locked. Eric pulled out his toolkit, working fast. Mira cried out, "It's coming!" Sci turned and faced the trees, standing between the monster and her daughter, her arms spread. "No more," she said. "You took everything." The monster stepped forward, roaring. Eric yelled, "Got it!" The door opened. He pulled Mira inside. Solari turned to follow, but slipped. The monster leapt. Eric reached out and caught her hand, pulling her inside just as the door slammed shut behind them. The monster slammed into it, roaring in rage. Inside, they collapsed, breathing hard, wet shaking, but alive. Eric crawled to the control panel. He sent the distress signal. This time, it went through. Help was coming. Solari lay beside Mira, holding her close. "You found her," she whispered to Eric. He smiled faintly. "No, she found me." The rain still poured outside. The monster clawed at the steel door of the beacon station, roaring like a demon in the dark. Each strike shook the walls. Inside, the air was thick with fear, but no one moved. Eric stood between the door and the two aliens, his hand on his blaster, his eyes locked on the shaking door. "It won't hold forever," he said. Mira clung to her mother's arm. Solari's body was still weak, but her grip around Mira never loosened. "What do we do?" she whispered. Eric stepped to the beacon console. "The distress signal is sent, but help is far. We may need to survive a few more hours." Solari looked toward the back of the station. "Is there a second exit?" Eric nodded. "A maintenance shaft, small, not safe in this storm." Boom! Another slam. The door bent inward slightly. Eric turned to them. "We have to set a trap." Solari blinked. "A trap? For that thing?" He nodded. "We don't have time to run anymore. We stand and fight." For a moment, silence. Then, Solari stood up. "Tell me what to do." Eric pulled out a small pack from his bag. Inside, wires, 2 plasma cells, a remote detonator, and a flare. He pointed at the generator room behind the console. "We wire the floor, lure it in. When it's standing over the plates," he made a motion with his hand. Boom. Mira's eyes widened. "But what if it gets you first?" Eric gave a faint smile. "Then you two run through the shaft." Solari touched his arm. "No, you're not dying for us." Eric looked at her and said gently, "I'm not planning to, but I won't let it take her, or you." They worked fast. Solari helped lay wires across the floor. Mira stood watch, holding Eric's scanner. Every few seconds it pinged, closer, closer. Then, silence. The monster had stopped moving. Eric frowned. "It knows. It's waiting." Solari whispered, "It's hunting." Eric armed the trap. The plasma. Charge was small but deadly if triggered right. He placed the remote in his pocket. Then the room went cold. The door creaked. Claws scraped metal. The power lights flickered. Then, crash. The monster burst through the top wall instead of the door. It came down like a hammer from the ceiling, roaring with fury. Eric dove to the side. Mira screamed. Solari grabbed her and pulled her back. The monster landed in the middle of the floor, exactly where the wires were hidden. Eric shouted, "Now!" He pressed the trigger. Boom! The explosion lit the room with blue fire. The monster howled as flames wrapped around its body. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew everywhere. It collapsed, burning, but still moving. "No!" Eric breathed. The monster stood again. Half its face melted, but alive. Solari stepped forward. Her eyes were filled with rage. "You stole my child. Now face a mother's wrath." She picked up the emergency flare, bright red, burning hot, and threw it straight into the monster's face. "Whoosh!" it screamed. Blinded, Eric didn't wait. He fired 3 blaster shots at its legs. The monster crashed down, then one final shot, through the head. The room went quiet. The monster twitched once, then stopped moving. Silence. Smoke. Breathing. Eric dropped to his knees. Solari fell beside Mira, hugging her tight. They had survived. Together. 30 minutes later, the sound of engines filled the air. A rescue craft landed outside, lights cutting through the fog and rain. Soldiers in armor rushed in. Eric stood, weak but smiling. "She's the survivor," he said, pointing to Mira and her mother. I'm just the guy who got lucky. The officer saluted him. Lucky or not, you saved lives. As the ship rose into the sky, Mira sat beside her mother, wrapped in a clean blanket. Solari looked at Eric across the seats. You didn't just save us. You gave me back the only piece of my heart I had left. Eric looked away, embarrassed. Mira reached for his hand. He held it, tightly. The rescue ship soared through the clouds. Inside, warmth and silence wrapped around them like a soft blanket. Mira lay curled up beside her mother on one of the seats, her head resting on Solari's lap. Her small hand still held Eric's sleeve, even in sleep. Solari gently brushed her daughter's hair back, her fingers trembling. Her eyes never left Mira's face. She whispered, I thought I lost her. Eric sat across from them, arms crossed, eyes tired. You didn't. You found her. You kept going. Solari looked up at him. Because she kept calling to me. Even when I couldn't hear her voice, I felt her. I knew she was alive. Eric smiled faintly. She believed the same about you. Solari's voice cracked. She was just a little girl, alone among monsters. Eric shook his head. Not alone. She survived. She waited. She fought. She's stronger than anyone I've met. For a while, they didn't speak. Just the soft hum of the ship. Then Solari whispered, You didn't have to help her. You could have walked away. You risked your life for a stranger's child. Eric stared at the floor. I know what it feels like to be left behind. I promised myself, if I ever saw someone else in that pain, I'd do something. Solari reached across the small space between them. Her fingers touched his hand gently. You did more than something, Eric. You gave me my daughter back. Hours later, the ship reached the main outpost on the edge of civilized space. Medical teams waited with scanners, warm beds, and clean water. They lifted Mira gently and placed her in a recovery pod. The moment her eyes fluttered open and saw Solari beside her, she smiled. Solari pressed her forehead to Mira's. I'm here, baby. I'll never leave again. Tears streamed down her cheeks. One of the nurses touched Eric's arm. You can rest now, sir. You look like you haven't slept in days. Eric gave a small laugh. I haven't. She led him to a nearby bench, with food and a blanket, but Eric didn't eat. He just watched them. A mother and child whole again. Something about it filled a place in his chest that had been empty for a long time. The next morning, Mira was stronger. Her color returned. She could sit up and eat by herself. She smiled more. Eric stood near the door, ready to leave. Solari walked up to him. You're going? He nodded. I've done what I came to do. Time to let you two heal. Solari looked unsure. Where will you go? Eric shrugged. Back to the field, missions, patrols, someone always needs help somewhere. She stepped closer. We need help too. He blinked. You do? Solari took his hand and gently placed Mira's small pendant in it. The one that glowed when mother and daughter were near. It's yours now, she said. You're part of her life. You saved her and me. Eric looked down at the pendant, then back at her. I don't know how to be anything more than a soldier, he said quietly. Solari smiled softly. Then be a protector. Be the man who heard her cry when no one else did. Mira peeked from her bed, waving. Eric, will you stay? Please? He couldn't speak for a moment. Then he slowly nodded. Yes, I'll stay. Weeks passed. Mira grew stronger, running and laughing again. Eric helped build a small home near the outpost. He taught Mira how to fly drones, how to set up shields, and how to fix her mother's old communicator. Solari watched from the porch, her heart full. One evening, as the three of them sat near a fire outside the home, Mira looked at the stars and said, You came to me like light in the dark, Eric. He smiled. You were the light, Mira. I just followed it. Solari reached for his hand under the blanket. This time, he held it back, tightly, and didn't let go.